The woman who marked it actually resigned from the examinations board the very next day. Henry didn't go to university. By the time he left school, he felt he had learned more than enough and that 3 more years of education would only get in the way of his becoming a world-famous author. His parents owned a large house in Reading where he could live. He was fairly sure that his father would support him while he wrote his first full-length novel. He already had the beginnings of an idea. Fame and fortune was surely only just round the corner. But then 2 things happened that changed everything. First of all, his parents died in a bizarre accident. They had gone to a circus outside Munich. Henry's mother had always been fond of trapeze artists, and they'd been having a wonderful time until the turn had come for the human cannonball to perform. Something had gone wrong. Instead of being fired into the safety net, the human cannonball had been blasted with some force into the 3rd row of the stalls, killing Mr. and Mrs. Parker instantly. The second disaster was that Henry discovered that his parents had left him no money at all. In fact, it was even worse than that. In recent years, their business, in dental equipment, had taken a distinct downturn, and their borrowing had got so out of hand that their home and all their possessions had to be sold off to pay their debts. And so, at just 19, Henry found himself broke and alone. Somehow, he needed to earn a living. With such poor A-levels, that wasn't going to be easy, but a friend of his parents took pity on him and managed to get him a job as an estate agent. This involved showing people around properties in Battersea, South London, and he hated it. He sneered at the other estate agents, and he was jealous of the young couples moving into houses and flats that he himself couldn't possibly afford. He was now renting a single room that backed onto the main railway line from Victoria Station. But he still had his dream. More than that, he had the use of a desk, paper and pens, and the office computer. And so, every evening when the agency closed, he would stay behind, tapping away into the small hours. He was writing his novel. 2,000 words a night, 5 nights a week. Henry figured it would be finished in less than 3 months. In fact, it took him 11 years. Writing is a strange business. You write a sentence and then you read it and one word leaps out at you. Or should that be jumps out at you? Or bothers you? And then you go over and over it, and by the evening you find you haven't written 2,000 words at all. You've only managed a couple of sentences, and even they don't strike you as being quite right. So you start again and again, crossing out and crumpling the pages into balls, and no matter how hard you try, you never quite reach the 2 words you're most keen to write. The end. That was how it was for Henry. 11 long years of showing people around properties, working through the night and sleeping right through the weekend certainly took their toll. By the time he was 30, he had lost most of his hair and much of his eyesight. He wore thick glasses and sat with a stooped back. A poor diet and lack of exercise had both hollowed him and drained much of the colour from his skin. The honest truth was that if he had gone to a funeral, no one would have known whether he was the undertaker or the corpse. But at last he finished the novel. And reading it through while chewing on a cheese rind, which was all he had been able to find in the fridge, he knew he had created a masterpiece. A horror novel for children, 100,000 words long and like nothing anyone had ever written before. Curiously, it was the death of his parents that had inspired him. Although he had been shocked by their sudden end, and even more by the disappearance of their wealth, Henry had never really missed them. His father had always been bad-tempered, and his mother too busy to look after him. But the way they had died had given him the idea of writing a story that would begin in a circus. Not an ordinary circus, but a world inhabited by strange creatures. Freaks. His novel was called Ring of Evil, and told the story of a young boy who ran away from home and got a job in the circus, only to find himself surrounded by ghosts, werewolves, witches, and vampires. Henry described in loving detail how the vampires would chase members of the audience into the car park, tear their throats open and drink their blood. The hero's name was Justin, and in Chapter 5 he was...